you'll be able to see, quote unquote, whose desk the form is on and whose court the ball is in. So you'll know who we're waiting on or if something's already been reviewed and it's already been issued. So you'll have a lot of visibility with these as well, and I'll show you what I mean as we work through it. Of course, there's no fee for engaging with us in Unifier. It's web-based, so it's not a software that needs to be put onto your computer. It's just something that you can access from the internet. Now, I will say it's browser neutral. Most of us have the best experience in Chrome as opposed to Internet Explorer, which would probably be the second favorite. But you could utilize it in Safari or Firefox if you preferred. It's also best on your actual computer, meaning laptop or PC, as opposed to on your phone. And while you can access Oracle through your phone, there are apps for it. It's not something that we've really rolled out ourselves, so it's going to be very clunky, difficult to work with, and I don't suggest it at this point. But stay tuned. So we'll go ahead and start digging in. Oracle's Primavera Unifier is the project management system that we're using now. When you go to log in, it is just web-based, so whatever browser you prefer, you're able to go in and utilize. And when you receive your credentials, you also receive the URL. So you'll have a welcome letter that's sent to you, and it'll have the URL in there that you can go to. And I want to point out, when you go to the login page, there's a place here for forgot password. And that is super, super important. You'll hear me talk about that a little bit more as we continue going. But the reason that that's so important is you'll want to enter what we call security question answers. And once you enter those answers in the system, it'll make it so you can use this link, because you will get locked out if you have 5 unsuccessful attempts of logging in. And in addition, if you ever forget your password and you need to get that so that you can get back in, then you'll want to reach out to your I-Beam support team. So to keep you from having that stutter in your work, to slow you down, just go ahead and enter your password secret recovery question answers, and I'll show you where that is, so that you on your own can get yourself back in the system and there won't be the delay of waiting on us to let you back in. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so we are going into a training database. So this isn't the correct URL that you will use when you go to log in the first time. Anything that you see in here is completely fabricated for training. So if you see a contract that was awarded to somebody, none of this is real. So here I've entered my user name and my password, and these are both case sensitive, so just be aware of that. They're case sensitive. And then I'll click sign in. And the very first time that you log into the system, you're likely going to find 3 tabs: your Home tab, an Avalon Bay tab, and your Workspace tab. Those 3 will probably already be open for you. And you notice here on our Home tab, which is where we're going to start, all of your menu items are here in the dark gray. So when I talk about the menu options, it's going to be over here on the left-hand side in dark gray. And what we have highlighted for us already is the Home option. And you can see that here under the Home option that the system has grouped our project tasks together for us. So I can see that for AVB Training Redev number 1, which would be a project, that I currently have 16 outstanding tasks. And then here for the Training New Construction project, I have 1 task. So that's how this is organized, and that really comes in handy if you're working on more than 1 project with us within the system. And it is possible that you're working on more than 1 project with Avalon Bay, but that they're not all in Unifier at this time. So I'm sure there was something that prompted you to join this particular call for a specific project, but I just want to make sure you're aware that if you are working on more than 1 project with Avalon Bay, it is possible today that some of those are being handled in Procore and others are being handled here within Unifier. But for a project, it's one or the other. I'm going to change and switch my menu options so that instead of being on Home, I'm going to choose Tasks. So I'll come down 1. And so here on Tasks, you can see that this lists the open outstanding tasks a little bit differently. So let's talk about what a task is. A task is anything that's in the system that's awaiting your attention. For example, if you had submitted an RFI, and there was a question on your RFI, so it came back to you, that would generate a task. And when a task is generated, you receive an email notification so that you're aware that that's outstanding. Another example would be if you are an RFI or submittal reviewer, then when it comes to you for your review, you would receive a task. And again, that task is going to come in your email. So let me show you here. I'll just show you a quick example. And these are examples of what the emails might look like. So you can see that they say either something was sent to you for or you have been copied on. Right? Those are the two basic options. So we'll take a look at this one first. When you double click in, it tells you a lot of information right away. So you can see that this request was sent to you for revision. So you had submitted something and it's coming back to you. If you're a reviewer of RFIs or submittals, it'll say that it was sent to you for review. And note that these come from Unifier. They're not going to come from Avalon Bay. They're not going to come from a person you recognize, but rather they're system generated. So these come from Unifier, and you'll want to keep that in mind so that when you see one, you know to act as opposed to ignore it, because we're not used to seeing those yet. You can see who it came from, and this will be an actual name, and then what it was sent for, and you'll see the project, the record number, and the title. You'll also have, and this part's super important, this link. So this part right here is what makes it so that you can click on the link. The system will open up automatically. You'll be able to enter your credentials, and then the exact record at hand will come open. So that's a real easy way, if you're able to address these in the moment, to go in and handle your work. So that's what these will look like when you have a task assigned to you, whether it's to revise something or if it's a matter of it's your turn to review it. All right, so back in the system, we can see all of our open tasks here, and anything that's on here at all is outstanding. Anything that's bold you haven't had an opportunity to look at yet, and anything that's in red is overdue. So you can see some of our tasks have a task due date. And if you want to resort any of your logs, and we call this the log view of your tasks, you can just come up to the header and you can sort by project by clicking on source name, or you could sort by task due date by clicking on task due. So that's one way to organize your work. Another feature that you have in here is the ability to look at different pieces of the open task as you look across. So you would be able to, for example, go right into an attachment, or you'd be able to check out the workflow. And let me show you an example of a workflow here. So all of these little charts, when you open them up, they'll show you the workflow so that you can see how something's going to route. And we'll use this one, even though that's not the type of process we're talking about today, just to give you an example. All right, so this is an example of one of the workflows. So you can see something gets created and it walks you all the way through the path of the record. So that's just an example of the visibility that you gain in using the system with us. Let's continue walking across it. Next you see the source name, and so the source name is really your project name, and you can see as I hover over these, they have hyperlinks. So if you were to click here, it would take you to the project itself, and then you can see the type of project it is, the type of task, and then what's outstanding for you to do. So that's your Home tab. The next tab that we have is your Avalon Bay tab. And there's not a whole lot for you today on your Avalon Bay tab, but what I will point out is here towards the center on the far right-hand side, we can see that this is showing us our communities. And if you are working on more than one project with us, you would be able to switch this to projects. And this will list out all of the projects that you have access to work with in Unifier with us. And then it's also a way where you could just double-click on it to open up that project tab. And we'll talk more about the project tabs themselves here in a moment. Now the last tab is your Workspace tab. And in general, the Workspace is for vendor management. And of course, there's not a lot of vendor management for you to worry about, but there is a vendor manager requests here, and this is the user setup request. This would be a way to let us know that you have a new user that you want to utilize the system. So what I suggest for now, while you're getting used to Unifier, is that you just reach out directly to your project team if there's someone else at your organization who's going to need access to the system. And then they'll enter a user setup request, and you would be able to track it here. All right, so the next thing we want to do is make sure that you are comfortable pulling up your project tab. I showed you one way to do that is to pull up the Avalon Bay tab, and I'll show you again. If you were to go to your Avalon Bay tab, we can find here or in the recent list, and then you switch from seeing all communities to projects, you would be able to see all of your projects right here, and you could double click to open it up. Because as we first start, you may or may not even have a first project task to do. You may not be able to find these on your home tab. So what you'll do is you'll click the plus mark, and the plus mark is right here next to the Avalon Bay tab. And when I click the plus mark, it gives me the ability to search. So I'll click there, and I can type in whatever project it is. And less is more, so I would just type in a few letters. Only the projects you have access to are going to pop up. So for example, I'm going to type in training, and then any project that has training in it will pop up. And I can click on it, and my project tab opens. So for now, let's leave the project tab, and we'll walk through it here in a moment. But instead, we're going to direct our attention to the top right-hand side of the screen. And you can see there's a star there. And the star function allows you to bookmark your project. And so if you're working on just the one project with us, you could add it. If you're working on several projects, you could add them so you don't have to continually go back and refine them should you happen to close out a tab. You also have the ability to mark them as a default, so they're always open the next time you log in. And you'll get logged out after 60 minutes of inactivity, or obviously you can choose to sign yourself out. But if you choose to sign yourself out, whatever tabs you had open at the time will be open the next time you go in. And while we're here, I also want to make sure you're familiar with the Preferences section, and we talked about that Forgot Password link. Right where your name is, you're going to want to click the little arrow and click on Preferences, and this will bring up a new window. And when it does, your option that you'll want to choose is Security. So we'll want to open up the Security tab. And now that we have it open, you could update your password, but what's super important, if you've already done that, is you'll want to make sure that you enter an answer to your question. So you can change your password to something you'll remember, and you can enter an answer here so that you can use the Forgot Password link. Again, if you don't do that, at some point you could be going really fast and you lock yourself out and you're not able to get back in until you reach out to iBeam support and they're able to get you back in. And then after you enter those, you would just click OK. All right, so that is really the preliminary. Here's the basic navigation and how to get to your project tab, because if you're entering the RFIs or submittals, that's going to be super important to be able to get to that so that you can do your work. So just a quick recap on logging in. You'll want to make sure that you create your security questions and update your password. And to do that, you just click on the little triangle that's next to your name and move to Preferences. After you do that, you can update your password as well as enter your password recovery secret question answers. And then once you've done that, you can click OK. At that point, you'll be able to use the Forgot Password link. And if you ever need it, when you click on it, you just enter your username and your email, and then it'll ask you to answer one of your questions. After you answer the question, it's going to send you password reset information. So you'll get an email containing a temporary password, and when you utilize that, the system will automatically have you go in and update your password to something that you'll remember. And then you'll log in and be off and running. Your Home tab is your to-do list that shows all of the open tasks. For any open task you have in the system, you'll have received an email to let you know that it's there. Anything that's here is still outstanding. If it's bold, you haven't had an opportunity to review it. If it is still on there at all, it's still outstanding. And then if it's overdue, it's in red. You can view all of your tasks on the specific project menu, and we're going to walk through that section as well. So if you only have one project with Avalon Bay at this point that's using Unifier, that might be where you want to start, but just know that the Home tab will show your open tasks for all projects that you're working in Unifier with Avalon Bay on. Which leads us up to RFIs and Submittals. So what we've done is we've taken all of our field processes at Avalon Bay, whether it's the drawings, the spec books, the reports and getting those in the system, or if it's submittals, submittal register, substitution requests, request for information, and we've put all of those in Oracle's Primavera Unifier as opposed to utilizing email, SharePoint, Procore, and Nuforma for this. So everybody can look at everything real time in one place. And some of the things that you gain is there will be dashboards to help you with your management and tracking of these. And for example, on the request for information log, you'd be able to see the due date, the status, ball in court, so you know who we're waiting on. There's also a report that goes out for any open RFIs once a week, and you can print these out of the system, and I'll show you that. And the same holds true for submittals. So you'd be able to see the log and the ball in court, and there is a report that goes out once a week so that you can see if there are any outstanding, and there is a way to print these from the system if you'd like to keep them for your records outside of Unifier. Something to keep in mind, Unifier does not operate the same as, say, Procore. And so in Procore, you might have been able to dip in and out of a record and make notes on it, regardless of whether or not it was your quote-unquote turn to take action. Now with iBeam, you'll be able to see the record, but it works very much like handing off the baton. Only one person can make notes or comments on the record at a time when the task has been assigned to them. So it's not as if everybody can dip in and out of the record and make comments or make changes, but rather whomever the record is assigned to as a task in the moment can do that part, and then they can forward it on to the next person. The workflow is what you would expect to see. The vendor will enter the submittal or the RFI. Avalon Bay is alerted and will review it. And then from there, we determine if it needs to be sent to the architect or the third party or an internal Avalon Bay reviewer. Once the record is completed from going through the architect and or the third party, Avalon Bay reviews it, and then we finalize it. And the vendor that entered it, generally receives an email. Sometimes more than one vendor will receive that notification. And you might remember in my email I showed you how sometimes the records will shoot out an automated email that says you have been copied on, just so all of the appropriate people can see what the result was. And then you can always check back in the system to see what the answer was. So as an example, it gets created. It comes to Avalon Bay to decide whether it needs to go internal or if it goes out to you all. And then you all can pass it back and forth to different colleagues working on the project before it comes to Avalon Bay and it comes to the end step. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the system. So I'm going to log in as a third party, which would be similar to an engineer. And we'll say that a vendor has entered a submittal or an RFI in the system, at which case we would have received an email. So you remember we saw the emails here. You would receive an email to let you know, and then you're able to click the link here that will take you directly into the system so that you can take action. If you don't go that route, instead you would be able to just log in and come here to your Home tab that has all of your outstanding tasks. Now you might remember that I mentioned that on this side you can see the project name, and if you hover over them, these become hyperlinks. So if you were to choose one of them, that will take you to the project as opposed to the outstanding record. So you can see when I hover, these become hyperlinks and that'll take me to the project. And maybe that's where you want to go. More often than not, you'll generally want to click from here over to the right so that you can go directly into the record. So I'll show you what that looks like. Right here, I'll click and open up the submittal. So just a few comments about these records that you're going to see here in the system. You can see there's three parts to the form. There's what we call the upper form. There is the task details, and then the lower form, and this is what has our submittal documents. So you can see all of those here within the system. Now to open any one of them, you're able to just click on the tab name. So if I wanted to see more information for the submittal, I can just click right here on the tab name and it's going to open the window. So I do that, you can see it expands quite a bit. If there's more than one person at your organization that's going to be responsible for reviewing these records, then of course it's going to be very important for you to review the record and decide whether or not you're the proper person to accept the task. So you could come through and you could read this upper form, and then you'd be able to click on the submittal documents and see what's in there. So we can see the formwork submittals here, and you'd be able to open and download that. And then what Avalon Bay's comments are found here. And if you find that you are indeed the person at your organization that needs to handle this submittal, then you would want to click on Accept Task. And Accept Task does a few things for us. When I click on Accept Task, number one, it tells everybody that the record is in progress. So we know that you've had a chance to look at it and you know it exists. Number two, it opens up the workflow action box so that you're able to determine where the record goes next. And then number three, you're able to add a document. So perhaps you want to take one of the documents that's included and download it, make your own comments or notes on it, and then re-upload them to the system. That's what you'll be able to do once you accept the task. If for whatever reason you've accepted the task and then you realize that you are not the right person, you have a few options. One is you can come up to Actions, Undo Accept Task. So that's one way around it. The other thing that you could do is you could come over to your workflow actions and you could click on Send to Colleague. So the workflow actions are over here on the top right-hand side, and we'll get very familiar with those. And you would just choose Send to Colleague. Now if you do that, you're going to want to make sure that you choose who it's going to, right? So if I say Send to Colleague, and I look over here in the To, it's blank. So I would want to click the To button. And when I click the To button, it'll give me the opportunity to say who I want to send it to. And you'll want to pick an actual person's name. Now here in the training database, names say test. So instead of architect test, you could imagine this is a true architect's name. Same with third-party test. Instead of third-party test, you would see your colleague's name there, and you could highlight it, click Add, and then say OK. So of course, for you to be able to use this Send a Colleague feature, that person needs to be set up in Unifier, and they would need to be set up to work on this specific project. So just keep that in mind. But we're going to say that you are the proper person to work on this. So we'll go ahead and work through the form. First, I'm going to click on Submittal, which will expand the upper form. And there's a lot of information in here. I'm sure there's no surprises, but you can see the basic submittal information. We can see the drawing number, and then if there was a spec section, that information is all found in here. And as we scroll down, we can see where we're able to respond. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. And right here, it's asking for my response. So reviewer response. And because we are third-party engineers, we'll take a look at the options there. They're really the same either way, but we might respond that this is approved, or maybe it's approved as noted. Might even be revise and resubmit, reject, not subject to review, or we reviewed it for info only. So let's say we chose approved as noted. If you had something that you needed to attach to it, then you're going to click on this tab name where it says Submittal Documents. It's going to open up that tab, and you had probably already double-clicked and opened one of these and printed it, and now you're ready to add your comments that were attached. So to add those comments, or to add what was noted, you'll come down to the Add button, And when you click on the Add button, a new window comes up. And I would leave these blank initially and go find your document first because part of this will auto-populate for you. So we'll come up to Add Attachment, My Computer. And when you do that, it's going to let you choose your document. So we are looking at a submittal. So I'll go into my submittals. And here's my form work submittal approved as noted. And I'll click Open. And you can see the name auto-populates, but I can add a short description. And then you would want to click OK. And that description becomes important as more and more documents are loaded in here because now we can see that this is the one for review. Then Avalon Bay reviewed it, and then we reviewed it and said it's approved as noted. All right, so now let's take a look at what it takes to send it forward to the next step. So for this part, we're going to take a look at the Action Details tab right here. So I'm going to click on that and expand it. And you might remember that earlier we came up and we looked at our workflow actions. So whenever you're ready to submit a record forward or even to send it back, it's a three-part process. First thing you do is choose your workflow action. Once that happens, this will auto-populate and you can double check where it's going to make sure that's what you intend or to update who it goes to. And then the third step is to send it forward. So it's a 1, 2, 3 process. So let's look at our options again. Under workflow options, we could send it to a colleague or we could send it to Avalon Bay. If we click to AVB, you'll be able to see the actual names. So it might be the PE, the PM, all of those names will actually appear here. And it's going to Avalon Bay for review and you're ready to click send. Again, if you need to send it to a colleague, whether it's another engineer, if it's an architect, then you would choose that option. You'll click the to box, highlight the person's name it needs to go to. You do not want to use the bold options because those are groups of people. So you want to use a name that you recognize that you know it needs to go to. You click Add and OK, and then you click Send, and you'd send a record on its way. So that's the submittal process. RFIs will work the same way, and actually I'm going to log in as a different user to show you the RFIs real quick. And again, it's very similar, but it's a little bit different. All right, so for the RFIs, when those come through, you'll still get the email. You can click the link within the email that will take you to the exact record at hand, or you have the option of coming to your Home tab and finding your outstanding tasks here. What we haven't really had a chance to explore yet is the Project tab. So again, to open a Project tab, you would just click on plus, and then you can search and find it. I happen to have it open right here, so we'll go right to our Project tab. And we can walk through the options that we have here, these menu options on the left-hand side. And you can tell right now that everything is collapsed, meaning you can't see everything that's in there, but there are these little plus marks that you can work with. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to expand the Tasks and Drafts section and click on Drafts, or excuse me, Tasks. And this is where you can find any outstanding tasks specific to this one project. So if you're only working with us on one project, then this might be the view that you choose to use as opposed to the Home tab. But if you're working with us on more than one, you definitely will want to utilize the Home tab because that's where you see all outstanding tasks, regardless of the project. Okay, so we'll keep going further down on the left-hand side. You're going to be spending your time primarily under tasks and then construction field BPs. So I'll expand the construction field BPs so you can see what's in there. And from here we can go to submittals and RFIs, submittals. Right, so there are the submittals. And so we just went through and approved one. and we would be able to find it here, and we'd be able to see the status. Right? So this is that log view that I was mentioning, where you'd be able to just click on the headers and you could resort them. There's also a find feature, so you could click on find and look for them by title or by vendor name. And then also there's what we call advanced logs if they're available in the system that'll show up here that bucket them even further. All right, so let's go on down to RFIs. So we're under the RFIs. You can see those buckets here between closed and open. This is the log view on the right-hand side. So this is the log view. And you would, again, be able to resort these by clicking on the header. We put all the newer ones on the top. And you can see the ball in court. So all of that information is available to you. So let's go up to our tasks and find one that's outstanding for us to complete. So we have this top one available for us to go in to complete. So I'll double click on it and the record opens up. And I'm going to expand it here. And the same holds true in regards to double check and make sure that you're the proper person to be reviewing the record before you accept it. And if you are the actual person that's supposed to be accepting the record, then you would be able to come up and accept the task. So that's going to be a step that you'll just want to get used to remembering, that if you're the one that's going to accept it, you come up here and you click on the Accept Task button. And when you do that, you can see your workflow actions appeared so that you're able to do that. And then also the recommendations open up. So this says architect, but as an engineer or third party, you would also have your third party comments that open up right here for you. All right, so we'll say that this is an RFI that came through. And we can read through it. Let me erase some of these marks. So we can see here that it is regarding the pedestrian ramp to the dog spa. We can see a due date and then the drawing number associated. Our question is found right here. And then if you'd like to look at the attachments, this time they're found under attachments on the lower left-hand side, which is a little different from the submittals. And you can click there and you'll find your attachment. And you can double click to open it. You might choose to download. Right. So then you would be ready to add your recommendation. So I'm going to come down to third-party comments. And enter the information. And I don't anticipate you'd have something you need to attach, but if you did need to attach something, you would be coming up to the Add Attachment. And it works from here similarly to what we saw, where you click on Add Attachment, My Computer, and a window opens up where you can go Browse, and you'd be able to find the exact attachment that you need, and you could click on Upload. And now we can see on the lower left-hand side that there are two attachments. All right, so now that we've done that, we are ready to move the record forward. And so just as we did before, I'm going to look at the action details a little bit closer so I can see where this record is going to go the next time I push it forward. So I'll go ahead and click on there. This expands, and we're back to our 1, 2, 3 process. 1, we're going to choose our workflow. 2, we're going to double check where it's going to go. And then 3, we're going to be ready to send it. All right, so let's do that. We have the option to send this to a colleague, which works the same way as it did before. When we click on that, the 2 is empty, so we would click on the 2 button. And when we click on the 2 button, it gives us the opportunity to select who we want to send it to. You would highlight their name, click Add, and then OK, and it'll auto-populate in here. The other option that you have instead of send to colleague would be send it on to Avalon Bay. So we select the workflow to AVB. We can see who it's going to go to, and you would see the actual project team members' names here, that it's going to Avalon Bay for final review. And then you'd be able to click Send, and it will go on its merry way. To print any of the RFIs or the submittals, you can just go right into the record, click on File, Print Preview, and then Custom. From here, click OK. And that will produce your soft copy that you're able to save or print for future reference. Thank you so much for your time.